Chapter 10 Worm's Story. Drake stepped inside Worm's dark cave. Worm opened one eye. "I need to shine your scales," Drake said. He was carrying a brush, a basket, and towels. Drake looked at Worm's brown scales. "They're not shiny," he said, "but I'll clean them anyway." Drake was still getting used to being around Worm. The dragon's head was as big as Drake. Worm could swallow Drake in one gulp if he wanted to. But something about Worm made Drake feel peaceful. Drake gently brushed one of Worm's scales. The big dragon made a sound low in his throat. Worm smiled and closed his eyes. "You like that?" Drake asked. Worm made another purring sound. "Good." He cleaned Worm's scales one at a time. "I kind of miss the onion field back home," Drake said to his dragon. "It was hard work, but I loved being outside." Drake started to clean Worm's head. "And I really miss my family," Drake said. Drake scratched behind Worm's ears like he did with his cat back home. Then he felt his hand start tingling. He tried to take his hand off Worm, but he couldn't. It was stuck. Drake's eyes widened. He looked at Worm. The dragon was staring hard at him. Pictures popped into Drake's head. He saw the cave from his nightmare. He saw the explosion again. Before, Drake had woken up. This time, the pictures kept coming. Worm was trying to get out of the cave, but the other dragons were in the way. Then soldiers rushed into the cave. Each soldier's shirt had a gold dragon sewn on it. "The king's soldiers?" Drake asked. The soldiers wrapped Worm in chains. They dragged him out of the cave. "Ah!" Drake could hear Worm's cry. Then his hand stopped tingling. The pictures left his head. Drake looked at Worm. "Did that really happen? Did the king's men take you away from your family, just like they took me away from mine?" Worm nodded. "I'm so sorry," Drake said. He threw his arms around Worm's neck. Worm closed his eyes. All his life, Drake had looked up to King Roland. But why would the king's men treat Worm like a prisoner? Wondered Drake. Maybe he isn't such a good king after all. Chapter 11 A Noise in the Night. "Good job cleaning Worm's scales, Drake," Griffith said, walking into the cave. Drake wasn't going to say anything about what Worm had shown him. Not yet. But he did have a question for Griffith. "How did the dragons get here?" he asked. "The king's soldiers searched far and wide," Griffith replied. "It is not easy to find a dragon. Most people have never seen one. But the king did not give up. His soldiers were able to capture these 4. "But did the dragons want to come here?" Drake asked. "The king does not always think about what dragons want," Griffith said darkly. "Now come. It is time for supper." After they ate, Bo and Drake went to their room. Bo was teaching him how to write the alphabet. Bo drew a capital D and a lowercase d. "See?" Bo said. "The big D looks like a dragon with a big belly." He drew a picture on the paper. "Like Vulcan," Drake said with a laugh. Bo laughed too. Moonlight glinted off Bo's dragonstone. It reminded Drake of something he'd wanted to ask Bo about. Does your stone ever glow? Drake asked. Bo shook his head. No, he said. Why do you ask? It's just, I thought I saw mine glow once, Drake said, when I was with Worm. That's interesting, Bo said. You should tell Griffith. Drake nodded. Tomorrow, he said. Drake wrote rows of the letter D before he went to sleep. He thought he would dream of D's, or maybe of Worm again. But just after he climbed into bed, thunk! Drake heard a loud noise. He sat up and saw two figures standing by Bo's bed.